In this video, I'm going to go over how to solve questions on slope and the slope-intercept equation. The first question is on slope. The question says, the coordinate of point A in the figure above are a, b, where the absolute value of A is greater than the absolute value of 3b. Which of the following could be the slope of AB? And this question provides us with a little diagram. Whenever you're given a diagram, it's important to analyze that diagram and label and identify as much of the given information as possible. Now, one important thing is that the line crosses through the origin. So that means that 0, 0 is a point on this line. Is a point on the line. And we know that the slope is going to be negative because it's going down from left to right. This statement is a bit obvious because all of the choices are negative. Now, the first point, the fact that 0, 0 is a point on the line, means that if we were to select a point, like let's say over here, and let's just give it some random values, the x-coordinate could be 5, and the y-coordinate could be -3. Because 0, 0 is a point, we could get the slope by finding the difference of the y values and putting it over the difference of the x values. So slope is just equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In this case, we could say this is our first point and second point. So y2 would be -3 minus y1, which is 0, over x2, which is 5 minus 0, and that would give us -3 over 5. Now, I like to do some like these little mental checks by just plugging in a random point and numbers just to see how the slopes are behaving and how the points are behaving, and just to get a better sense and better feel of what the question is telling me. Now, because in this case this is our x-coordinate and y-coordinate, or A and B, we can get the slope just by taking the second number and putting it over the first number, since we have 0, 0 as a point on the line. So we can take each of these choices and write out a point that would work with these values. So let's start with D and then go above. So because the slope says is -1 over 4, we can say that a point could be -1 over here and 4 over here. The x-coordinates are going to be positive if the y-coordinates are negative. Whenever the y-coordinates are negative over here, the x-coordinates are positive. So C would be 3, -1. This one would be 2, -1. And the first one, after doing all these other choices, becomes a bit more obvious, where it would be 1, -1. Now, the question says that the absolute value of A has to be greater than the absolute value of 3B. So A, the first coordinate, has to be greater than 3 times the second coordinate. The first one doesn't work because, and we're only dealing with absolute values, so 1 is not greater than 3 times 1, so it can't be A. 2 is not greater than 3 times 1, because 2 is not greater than 3. 3 is not greater than 3, so C is out. And then D works, because 4 is greater than 3 times the absolute value of B, which is just 1. So 3 times 1 is 3, 4 is greater than 3, and therefore D is the answer. So again, just to reiterate, with these kind of questions, when they give you a diagram, the first thing you want to do is label as much information on the diagram. So the fact that that is crossing the origin is very significant here. And then sometimes you want to give some values to the diagram, especially if they don't give you any marked values or any marked points, and just see how it's working within the context of the rest of the question. Okay, on to the next question. I'm going to erase everything. Okay. 17. In the xy plane, line L passes through the origin and is perpendicular to the line 3x plus 2y equals 2b, where b is a constant. The two lines intersect at the point 2a, a minus 1. What is the value of b? Okay, so this one has a lot of information, and I've gone over this question a couple times, and every single time I've done it, I do not really know where to start. I didn't really remember how I solved the questions the previous times. I would just list out the information and then go from there. And that's what I'm going to do over here. Like, as I'm looking at the question, I do not know what the answer is or how to get there from the very beginning. So let's dissect this step by step. Okay, in the xy plane, line L passes through the origin. So I'm going to write that down. Passes through the origin, so it has 0, 0, has a point. And it is perpendicular to the line 3x plus 2y equals 2b. So if we can find the slope from this equation, we can figure out the slope for line L, which is going to be the negative reciprocal. But the problem with this equation is that it's not in standard form, so I have to convert that first. So, and this is the equation for the second line, so I'm going to write in a separate column line 2. Slope in the formula is 3x plus 2y equals 2b. I'm going to get the y by itself on the left side and everything else on the right side. In order to do that, I'm going to subtract by 3x from both sides. And then I will be left with 2y equals negative 3x plus 2b. I'm keeping the negative 3x on the left side because the slope is going to be attached to the x value, and the b is usually at the end because of the standard form of the formula, which is y equals mx plus b. Okay, so I still want to get the y by itself, so next thing is to divide by 2 on both sides. So left side becomes y equals negative 3 over 2x plus b. And so the slope of line 2 is negative 3 over 2. The slope of line L is going to be the negative reciprocal. So since this is line 2 is already negative, this is going to be positive, and it's going to be positive 2/3. Now, because we know that the line passes through the origin, if we had a line that passes through the origin, the y-intercept would be the origin itself, or 0. So I can write an equation, y equals 2/3 x plus 0. So that's the equation for line L. Okay, now that's a bunch of information that we derived from the first sentence. The second sentence says, if the two lines intersect at the point 2a, a minus 1, what is the value of b? So the fact that they both intersect at 2a, a minus 1 means that 2a, a minus 1 is a point that can fit into both lines. both equations. So starting with the equation for line L, I am going to plug in 2a comma a minus 1. So a minus 1 is the y value, so a minus 1 equals 2/3 parentheses 2a plus 0. The plus 0 doesn't need to be included, but it does represent the b part, so we could get rid of it, but I'll just eliminate it in the next step. It doesn't really matter. So left side, a minus 1 equals 2 times 2a is 4a over 3, and then I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. So left side becomes 3a minus 3 equals 4a. And then I'm going to add 3 to both sides, or actually, I'm going to subtract 3a from both sides. So the left side becomes negative 3, right side becomes a, and now we have a value for a. So this is a pretty useful piece of information. That means that we can figure out what these two values are. So 2a must be negative 6, and a minus 1 must be negative 4. Okay, and because we know that these are the 2 points, or the 2 x and y values, we can plug this into the equation for line 2. So negative 4 equals negative 3 over 2 parentheses negative 6 plus b, and we're trying to figure out the value of b. Now the reason I put them into parentheses is just so that I know where I'm inputting my information in case I need to check my work. I could have just multiplied the negative 6 with the negative 3 over 2 and just simplified it right as I was doing it, and it would save me like an extra couple seconds, but I don't think it's worth to save those extra couple seconds when you might end up coming back to the question to check up on your work, especially if it seems like your answer is not in any of the choices. That happens sometimes. Okay, so let's simplify. Left side is negative 4, right side negative 3 over 2 times 6. So negative 3 times negative 6 is going to be positive 18. 18 over 2 is 9. Positive 9. Plus b. I subtract 9 from both sides. Left side becomes negative 13 equals b. And that is answer A. And that, so to wrap up what this is all about, whenever you have slope questions and questions with slope-intercept and questions with a diagram, what you want to do is list out all the facts. And when I was doing these questions, I didn't really know what steps to take. It wasn't like a question about a square and finding the area where you just try to figure out the sides and then figure out the area. This was a question where they don't really specify where you need to start. And so my first instinct is to always list out all the facts and then see what can be used with other facts to give me maybe a derived fact. Something like this fact over here, the fact that negative 3 is equal to a, which then makes this coordinate much easier to work with. When they give you an equation for a line like this, it's better to write it out, and then it might help you notice that it's not in the standard form, and then you can get into the standard form and then get another clue from there, such as what I did over here. And that gave me the slope of line 2. They could have just mentioned the slope in the question itself, but they didn't. They just gave us the equation of a line, which was not in standard form. So the slope that we figured out was a derived piece of information. The fact that line L is perpendicular to that slope is another piece of derived information. So every single piece of information that they give us has led to at least one or two additional pieces of derived information. And that happens pretty often. So whenever you have a question where you don't really know what to do, just list out all the facts and see if you can get any new facts from any of the facts that you've written down. That's pretty much the go-to strategy for questions that you don't know how to solve. Okay, that's the end of this video.